In 1919, in these cold, hostile waters, an act of incredible heroism and defiance took place. After 4 years of mass slaughter during the First World War, as the global pandemic of the Spanish flu tore at a worldwide weary population, there were some in Germany who refused to give in. In particular, the crew of U-boat UC-71. When ordered to surrender their submarine, it never arrived with its intended captors. Was it sunk by the Allies? By incompetence? Was there treachery? Or was it sunk on purpose by the crew? When we think of U-boats, we think of the death and destruction wrought by the German Kriegsmarine against Allied shipping during the Second World War. The U-boats nearly brought Britain to her knees, and in Winston Churchill's own words, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." But it was in the First World War that the real possibilities of the U-boat were discovered. Throughout the 4 years, the German U-boats sank 5,000 merchant ships, 104 warships, and killed 15,000 sailors. But against this, the German Navy lost 217 submarines and 6,000 sailors. Unbelievably, the Allies, and particularly the Royal Navy, did not learn the lessons from the war. But as the conflict came to an end, heated and tense talks were being taken place in a railway carriage in Compiègne. Amongst other things that were being agreed was what was going to happen to the German Imperial fleet. This impressive and still incredibly dangerous fleet had been a real thorn in the side of the Royal Navy throughout the war. The arms race and the development of the dreadnought-type battleship had even been a factor in the beginning of the war in 1914. Even when the armistice had been signed, there was a genuine concern that the German Navy might yet still come out for one final glorious clash with the Royal Navy. It was absolutely critical that within the peace talks, the Royal Navy got their hands on the German fleet, and this would include U-boats. This would ensure there would be no future threat from Germany by the sea. In these tense talks, the British delegate, one Admiral Weems, managed to get the German delegation to surrender the entire German fleet to the British. This was a monumental decision. So much hardware was just to be given away to the Imperial Navy's greatest enemy. Battleships, battle cruisers, destroyers, cruisers, patrol boats, mine layers, auxiliary ships, and of course, U-boats. The German Navy, as you can imagine, was not happy. They had spent a frustrating war being besieged in their ports, blockaded by the Royal Navy. Low on supplies and with the High Command unwilling to risk too many clashes in the North Sea, the sailors were fed up and bored. Even more so, because during the war, they had scored some notable successes against the Royal Navy. They had defeated the British at the Battle of Coronel, had come away from Jutland with a better score than the British, and had successfully attacked the British mainland at Scarborough, Hartlepool and Whitby. And yet they had remained in port for the majority of the war. Now all the sailors had to look forward to was surrender, internment, and a very uncertain future. The whole process for the surrender of the German fleet was called Operation ZZ. The Commander-in-Chief of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet, Beatty, was in charge of the surrender of 74 German ships. He had to ensure they were disarmed and escorted properly by 191 Allied ships into the Firth of Forth in Scotland. The British were still expecting the Germans to try something, maybe begin a fight, or even something more underhand. Some British gunners watched the parade of interned ships wearing gas masks in case of a gas attack by their enemy. And so, escorted across the North Sea without ammunition and skeleton crews, the German Navy was about to be condemned forever. But the crew of the UC-71 had other ideas. The UC-71 was a German Type II mine-laying submarine. She was launched in August 1916 and had a very successful career before the armistice. From 19 patrols, she claimed to have sunk 63 ships with mine or torpedo. This submarine was officially reported to have been lost whilst being escorted with the other German ships into British captivity. There are no reports of any aggressive actions which may have led to the sinking of UC-71, and the official report states that she was lost because of bad weather and high waves. Not one of the crew was lost during the sinking, which suggests that it wasn't an accident, but more likely that the crew were expecting the submarine to sink. As well as this, a diary entry from an engineer from the submarine reads, "No Englishman should ever step on the boat. That was the will of the crew, and they achieved it." So did the crew of this 50-metre-long vessel deliberately sink their own submarine? If so, it shows the crew would be men still loyal to their country, their navy, and their colours. And in a defiant act which could bring retribution on them, they sank their vessel so it would not fall into the hands of the enemy. Now the location of UC-71 was not a mystery, as she went down in about 20 metres of water off the German archipelago of Heligoland. She had been a regular haunt for divers for years, until given official protection. A team of marine archaeologists and 3D experts have now made an incredible study of the wreck. During 4-hour long dives, the team took thousands of photographs using state-of-the-art cameras and high-intensity lighting. They believe the 3D map created from these proved the boat was scuttled by its own crew. Professor Rowland said, "Hatches are certainly open across the submarine, which corroborates the claim that it was deliberately sunk." It is possible, however, that divers may have visited the wreck before it was protected, and highly likely that divers may even have been inside the sub, though this would be exceptionally dangerous. But given what we know, and from the physical evidence witnessed when we were down there, and from our imagery, it is likely that the boat was sunk deliberately. The sinking of the UC-71 was certainly not an isolated incident of defiance against the Royal Navy and the terms of the surrender. On the 21st of June 1919, the Royal Navy ships guarding the captured Germans at Scapa Flow set sail for fleet exercises. The German commander of the imprisoned ships, von Reuter, saw his chance. He gave the order for all crews to scuttle their vessels. Seacocks, portholes and torpedo tubes were open to the sea. And as the cold grey waters flooded in, the flags of the Imperial German Navy were hoisted again. When the Royal Navy ships on exercise were alerted as to the catastrophe unfolding at their base, they about turned and steamed back as fast as possible. As soon as they arrived, they raced to rescue as many ships as they could. Their efforts, though not wasted, only managed to beach 22 ships in shallow waters. But that story is for another time. If you'd like to see our video on the impact of the First World War on local communities, then click on this video here. Thanks for watching.